Hello and welcome to the Spoken Not Stirred podcast. I am Dauda Ladejobi. So, in this episode, I wanted to talk about community. Like before, we'll go over a short definition of what community is, or what it means, and then we'll do a short writing exercise. For this episode, we've got a great conversation lined up with our last feature, which is actually our first feature of 2021, Neanderthal Bard. So, because we've got quite a lot to get through, let's get into it. So like I said, we're talking about community, and community is something that means quite a lot to myself. A lot of my work is revolved around the community. As you know, I work in Borough and Dagenham at Studio 3 Arts, and Studio 3 Arts work is all about engaging the community. Apart from that as well, I just strongly believe in what community is, what it does, what it means to people, and what a good community can really, what it can bring out in you. So yeah, Oxford Dictionaries defines community as a group of people living in the same place or having a particular characteristic in common. Characteristic in common is an odd one, but I definitely agree in with regards to having something in common. You can build a community like a lot of people do now online with just having one thing you all like a fan group or fan club or whatever. So communities can build out of anything. They can be very good and they can be very bad. You can have, there are various examples that we've seen in the last year coming out of all the different, I guess, political movements that have been going on. And that's a great example of good and bad movements and communities. Communities are powerful. They can really do a lot, and they can make us feel like we are part of something. And sometimes we can be blind to that. We can be blind to what that something is, because when you're part of a community, you also have that urge to defend it and look after it, which can be beautiful sometimes, but also can be destructive at other times. So that is community in a nutshell. Thank you, Oxford Dictionaries, for that definition and my ramblings that went along with it. As always, wanted to do a writing exercise, something else just to get us thinking about writing, thinking about that word community, what it means, and how we can, bring that into our poetry and expand upon it. So, in the last episode, I showed you one exercise where you can, a way of building a poem from one word. Today, we're going to go over another example of that. So, get your pen, get your paper, and get ready to write. So, for this, we're going to start with community in the middle of our paper, in the middle of our page. So, what we want to do is explore, like we did before, words associated to community. So, when you think community, what words come into your mind? For this particular one, I want to be strict with where we put our particular words. So, for this half of it, put those examples or those associated words at the top of your page. Put your page into, let me make it easy for you. Put your page into communities in the middle. At the top of the page, put words associated to community. So you could have family. You could also have friends, so forth and so forth. Once you've got that, we'll get on to the next part of the exercise. Right, for the next part of the exercise, what I want you to do is split the bottom part of your page into two again. And in one part, I want you to write what you think community would taste like. Just exploring your sensory, your senses there. What was it? Sensory stimuluses? All of that stuff. Yeah, all that good stuff. So what would community taste like? And then on the other side of the page, what would it smell like? What would it smell like? I'll go smell first. I think it smells easier for me. I feel like when we think community, I also think of cities. So I also think like smoke and that smoky essence you get from the cars. And for some reason, I still think factories, even though we don't have factories like that anymore. But it still is just what comes into my mind. I also think of the food as well. And pizza is something that always comes in my mind. I think New York is just, I think I'm just dreaming of New York. Pizza and so forth. Same for taste as well. Let me give you one example. Taste. I probably would go food, but for some reason, when I think of a taste of community, I think home cooking. And for me, that's, well, it's just Nigerian cuisine. And I always think jollof rice. Jollof rice is, that is what community tastes like to me. And so forth. So you can have a few examples, and once you've got that, we'll get to the writing. Great. So what you should have on your page is community in the middle, and you should have words that you feel associate to community at the top of your page or at one segment of your page. And for me, I've put words such as family, friends, parties, politics as well, and music. And then at the bottom of your page or the other section, which should then be split in two, I feel like I've made this complicated. You should have what you feel community tastes like and what you think community smells like. So for me, smell, I've put privilege. I feel like you can smell the privilege in some places. Perfumed, I think that links. I've also got pizza, like I said before, and sewage as well. And taste, I've got stuff like pick a mix and jollof rice, like I said. Beer and spirits, which I think matches already with the party element. And homely, I feel like communities can taste and feel homely. Now, what this allows you to do now is just match these two. You can match these words together and give them a bridge, and you can create a poem from that, really. You can talk about your the homely parties you had with your pick and mix friends, families that remind you of perfume, privilege, and jollof rice. I don't know. But it's just there, another way of building into poetry and finding words that link together and ways to express those words. And I feel like when we touch on our sensory elements and we touch on our senses and what we feel and taste, touch, see, and all of those senses, it really helps a poem and whatever else we're writing connect with the audience. And that's a big thing with poetry, is a lot of it is to connect. So yes, I hope that was helpful. Hope you was able to follow along. Hope you come out with some great poetry from that. Do feel free to send some of your poetry in as well. We've got a Facebook and Instagram, all at Spoken Not Stirred, or SNS Poetry on Instagram. And yeah, it will be great to see what people are producing from this if you're following along. And now it's time for my conversation with Neanderthal Bard. Neanderthal Bard is a spoken word artist and, well, poet. He's also the poet in residence for Crisis, and he has been for the last 2 years. In that time, he's been showing and highlighting the different faces of homelessness. Apart from that, he's also a multiple slam champion. And seriously, once you hear his material, it's not a mystery to see why and hear why. And apart from that, he's a top-notch workshop facilitator. So I hope you enjoy the conversation. At the end of it, he does recite one of his amazing poems, so we hope you enjoy that too. And I'll be back at the end to let you know what more to expect from Spoken Not Stirred and Studio Free Arts. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Neanderthal, for joining us. Thank you for your last feature as well, for featuring in January. It was powerful. It was ridiculous. It was like...
Well, I want to thank you guys for raising money for Crisis while doing it. You know what I mean? It's a really nice touch. I've had emails from. It's quite funny because the head chef from Cafe at Crisis is based in Commercial Street. He was sat in the room and watching it. It was like, yeah, Shelley. He was like, yeah, man, that was awesome. I loved him. He's a proper cool guy as well.
That's great. I mean, the event was amazing. Even you getting Elizabeth down to talk was like great touch. And yeah, I feel
although I managed to say that she was there at the first ever Crisis 50 years ago, and I managed to be endearing yet slightly insulting all at the same time. You know?
It's a nice gesture, but I'm not that old.
You've given me 20 years.
No one wants to be aged like that.
And that's my boss.
Yeah.
That's my direct boss and that. And there's me saying she's like 90 and that. You know what I mean? Like,
I think you may have just halted your what do they call it when you get more money, promotion.
yeah.
Yeah.
I might have got rid of that idea. Passed over again. I get passed over even when I'm the one doing the choosing, to be honest.
You know what? Though? It's easy to. I'll always overlook myself. I feel like if I'm there choosing like a whole bunch of who to give something to, and I'm part of the list, I'll just consciously be like, well, I'm gonna put myself to the side for a second. So yeah.
I've got a line in one of my poems. Always the last to be picked, even when I'm picky.
Sick. Yeah, it's a real thing. It's a real thing. That is sick.
It's just a self-confidence thing, isn't it? It kind of like alludes to a lack of self-confidence or self-belief.
Yeah, definitely.
You know what I mean?
Definitely. I feel like as poets as well, that's something that sometimes we deal with, where poetry is something that's so, there's so many forms of it, and you can personally prefer a different form that you don't do. So then it makes you feel more inadequate in what you do, if that makes sense. So like...
go on, sorry.
No. I was gonna say there was some poetry I watched earlier today, and it was just so metaphorical. It was beautiful, and I was like,
"Is this the 444 thing that you shared?"
Yeah. It was different level, and they're all mostly based in I think it is mostly West and Central Africa. Most of them are based. So yeah, it was a different tone to the poetry, different ways of using the words, and it was just, I was like, whoa, what am I doing?
Do you know what it as well does me up, right? Is when people from other countries where English is their second language start pouting out better poetry than I do, and it's my first language. Do you get what I mean? It's like I remember I was in my first ever workshop at Crisis. It's the first ever workshop I did, and I was faking it until I gained it. I was blagging the whole situation, right? And we were rewriting a list poem that I did, like this poem's for you is called, and like mine's about mental health, but we slanted it towards like the homelessness, and one of the guys, he goes, "This poem's for you if you've been denuded." And I went, "Yeah, man, that sounds cool and that, but we're going to try and use real words." And he just looked at me as if I was crazy. He just looked at me as if I was absolutely crazy, right? And denuded means stripped bare.
Like, do you know your language?
I'm into this whole, you know what I mean? Like, it's great to make it rhyme and that, but let's use real words and that. And he just looked at me as if I was like the foreign, you know what I mean? Like, I was speaking a foreign language to him, you know what I mean? He was like, "You don't know English, fella," because that is a word.
Do you know, I feel like sometimes I will fall into it, but when you're so used to using a language, you forget there's so much more of that language you can use, whereas people who have to learn to...
We have I don't know if it's the correct term in that, but we have a vocabulary, but we don't use our whole vocabulary. So I kind of like think that then we come down to our vernacular. You know what I mean? The words that we use all the time. You know what I mean? And I try and get away with using the same rhyming schemes in my poems because of my vocabulary is extensive. You know what I mean? As you know from the workshop the other day. But my vernacular is terrible. You know what I mean? If I can throw a choose to lose and abuse inside a poem, that'll be in every single poem. You know what I mean? Eminem does it.
Is that justification? Yeah, I mean, why can't I?
That's my kind of my guide, isn't it? If Eminem can do it, I can do it. That's it. Done.
Take the creative license. I see it. So no, you're talking about you're just talking about Crisis actually, and one thing I think is quite interesting with regards to the way with your poetry when I was exposed to it, it was very focused on the subject of homelessness and the stories of people who may have been, gone through that. So I think you explained it a little bit in the actual on the night, but do you want to just give people an insight of how that direction how you went into the direction and how it came about?
Well, when I first started writing poetry, it was about my mental health. It was a cathartic process. It was an accident. Yeah, I mean, I've mentioned this in lots of interviews. It was a complete accident writing poetry, and I spent 2 years writing about my mental health, other people's mental health, cuts to mental health services, and it just seemed like I captured a phrase called "they're the same word, different order disorder," which means because of same word, different order disorder, and because you're talking about one subject matter, you know what I mean? And there's words that keep coming up, like pain, and you know what I mean. And so there was 3 things that I wanted to be able to talk about within my poetry. One was mental health, another was homelessness, and the other one was bullying. And I sent out a few emails because I was doing a workshop talk, just a small workshop talk. And I sent out some emails to homeless charities, and Crisis were one of the ones that got back to me. And while I was up there doing the first workshop, and that we talked about the possibility of becoming a poet in residence, and that kind of then set me on that trajectory. That's all I was gonna focus on then, until that poet residency ended, and that was a 2-year residency. It's still not ended. As Elizabeth said, it's still not ended. We're 3 years in now. But it's like Elizabeth said, you can't imagine anybody else doing it, to be honest. It's which is nice, but yeah. So
yeah, that's great. That is great. And there's something you said right at the beginning as well. You said writing poetry is an accident. Now, like, you didn't just wake up one day, pen just fell into your hand.
No. I was asked to write. One of my support team, I've got borderline personality disorder. I was diagnosed at the age of 37, and I struggled for 3 years with the diagnosis. A few things happened, breakdowns and such. And when I was about 40, one of the team around me said, "Why don't you try writing a letter to your mates and your family and that? Just explain your diagnosis, explain it makes you no different. You write what you want to write in it, but just yeah, I mean, tell." I know now that the whole idea was me writing it down to tell myself. And then I realised the power of writing something down in front of you to actually realising this is actually happening to you. And the first 2 lines were, "How would you feel and what would you do if your world was just grey with no shades of blue?" And because I kind of depict my days in grey and blue, right? As in grey sky and blue sky.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't matter what the weather's like. If my head is grey, then we're going back to sleep, man. We're sleeping it off. That's what I do. That's I medicate the days away by sleeping. Yeah.
No, fair enough. Sometimes I guess coping mechanisms, but that is really interesting. And from, I guess, the journey of even that letter thing of writing it and telling these stories, and you seeing the impact of that, did you find that, I guess, an easy transition then from writing about your mental health to then writing about homelessness, which I guess is at that point?
There's so many crossing over factors, mate. There are so many crossing over factors, and what I didn't want to get dragged into was rehashing all the old stuff that I'd done, changing the subject matter. You know what I mean? So everything I'd written before really was about how I felt and not what I saw. And writing about homelessness, well, I was homeless at 21 myself, not for a massive period of time, but it's something that I could show empathy towards because I'd been there. Do you get what I mean? And one of the most important things we need to understand about homeless people is, yes, they're all homeless, but their journey into homelessness is completely unique. And so writing what you might call character poems from different people's perspectives was a way for me to be able to extend my writing from writing about how I feel to writing about what I see and observe, you see. So
that's powerful. I love that sentence. When you said you was only writing about how you felt, not what you saw. And that's quite interesting. And I think as poets, obviously, it's about our perspective and how we share that message.
there's a self-care thing that comes in, you see. When you write about, or in my experience, I'm just saying, I mean, it sounds like I'm saying this is how it is, but I mean, everything's different for everybody. But for me, when I was writing about how I felt, it was hurting. It was supposed to hurt. You know what I mean? And it took me days, weeks to get over writing a poem. It was a traumatic experience, and I had to try and give myself a break. I had to try and give my emotions a break. I was writing 10 poems a day when I first started writing. You know what I mean? So I had to give myself a break. After 2 years, I was exhausted.
I bet.
And then joining Crisis, actually, rather than making me more tired, gave me an opportunity to reinvigorate myself and my perspective on my writing. That it gives you a whole different audience, which is like kind of what I do. I don't write very much. I just go to different places.
Someone told me something that was amazing, and it changed my perspective on because I'm one of those people. I'm like, I've been sharing the same poem for ages, whatever. But someone said but it's a new audience. They haven't heard what they haven't.
Listen, you don't buy an album to listen to it once.
Sick.
You don't buy an album. In fact, usually when you go to see a band at a concert, you want them to play their old, not their new.
Yeah. That's real.
Bands are left trying to sneak in new songs into their old sets. You know what I mean? Because they're like, no.
That's actually, it's interesting. So I find it weird that in poetry we always have this feeling of being like new stuff, when actually, yeah, you're right. There's power in having classics. There's definitely power in having classics.
I think what makes me different to a lot of other poets is a lot of other poets write a lot, but then don't become intimately connected to their work. They don't give themselves time to be. So that intimate connection to the work comes with learning the performance. Do you get what I mean? And so that's like you'll see. Like I gesture a lot. Now those gestures aren't just like I'm a nutter. They are. Those gestures lead me to the next. No, they lead me to the next. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's the only way I can do what I do is by practicing that every day. Practicing it every day. My missus goes absolutely mental. Like if you say something comes on the TV, say that, like adverts come out in runs of adverts, so that advert will be on air. Yeah. Well, if there's a line in an advert that's in one of my poems, I have to pick up from that line and do the rest of the poem with it. So Sarah, oh God, she knows my poems better than I do.
That's great. That is great. And the performance value is a big thing for me, and your performance element is amazing, especially as I've really just witnessed you over Zoom mostly, and to be able to see that performance value and the performance element over Zoom is also quite amazing. Seriously,
I miss the connection though. I do miss that connection. See, you can tell when people like what you're doing when it's live, but you can also tell if it's falling a bit flat. I think Kate Tempest said in her book on connection that her fear of not connecting with people in the audience was always false fear, because she always connected. She managed to connect. Do you know what I mean? And I think language is a massive thing there. I mean, to use basic language. There's, in the film Philadelphia, Denzel Washington says, "Talk to me like I'm a 4-year-old." Because when you talk to the most stupid person in the room, everybody in the room understands what you're saying.
Yeah.
But you start throwing like translucent, effervescent pavements into a poem, you know what I mean? And there's going to be people that don't understand. So I keep my language basic. Really.
Yeah, and I think actually it was people like Kate Tempest that really, because when I first started doing poetry, there was a big drive of using words that made you seem a certain way, that kind of, it was disassociated with, I guess, common folk because of how poetry was before and the elitist history behind it, I think. But it was poets like Kate Tempest, like Benjamin Zephaniah.
Well, Kay, they opened up my world. I was shaken behind a bit of A4. So I posted my first poem onto Facebook. And somebody I didn't really know, but they knew of a poetry night just starting in Margate. So I went there, jaws hit the floor when I did my poem, and that was me hooked. You know what it's like, with people like anything you do. Do you know what I mean? It's like when your dad used to cook a meal, like, and every bite you had was like, is that all right? Is that all right? You know what I mean? Like, because of like, is that all right? Yes, it's not. Yeah, potatoes lovely. You know what I mean? Potatoes are lovely. You know, those mashed potatoes. The mashed potatoes. Mashed potatoes. Are they all right though? Are they all right? Yeah. So whenever you get that that signal that somebody really like, especially when it's something that you haven't been doing very long. I cooked. I was a chef.
Sometimes it takes you off, innit? And then you're like,
I was a chef for nearly 30 years. And never even thought about poetry. And to realise that you do have a valuable input elsewhere just because you can't go back into a kitchen again. It was a life-changing moment. Once again, the same member of support staff that told me to write a letter, write a letter. He said, "Have you ever heard of K Tempest?" And I was like, "Who?" And he showed me Renegade, where Kay she just looked so vulnerable in front of the mic, and she hesitated, and it was just, but there was no paper. She wasn't reading it. They weren't reading it. They were wrapped up in it, enveloped by it. Like, do you get what I mean? And it's like, and in my head, that's the first time that's the first time they've ever performed the poem. You know what I mean? Not that they've been on stage 100 times and been performing it since they were 14. You know what I mean? And that poem they did for me. You know what I mean? And it kind of a Renegade opened my whole life. Kay has got a lot to answer for, to be honest.
Unleash the world.
Release Stefan.
That's great, man. And yeah, definitely is like a amazing role model for a new generation of poetry as well. So it does.
It's not Release the Kraken, it was Release the Stefan. And, you know what I mean? Like, it was...
So there's two things I wanted to ask about, but the first one now, because you've just obviously just said your real name. I wanted to ask where your name came from, Neanderthal Bard. What's the story behind that?
That's a pretty cool story, I think. Anyway, I like. One of the second slam I ever went to, the headline act was Anthony and Dagenham. Now, I was transfixed by the fella. I was absolutely transfixed. My eyes didn't leave him. He was walking up and down the stage. I didn't understand a word he was saying, to be honest, because the subject matter was like, it was way out of my field. I had no frame of reference when we're talking about Nefertiti, and he talks about his culture, you know what I mean? And I had no frame of reference in my mind to associate it to, and I just felt that little bit under-evolved. Now, in the stages of evolution, one step back is Neanderthal. And so, yeah. And I do in my head for T-shirts, which we made in the end, right? Which was Darwin's theory of evolution, all the way up to Neanderthal, and then a microphone stand instead of Homo sapien. Then a microphone stand, yeah. So
it's just you, but yeah, I like that.
Yeah, so it was like Swamp Thing. You know what I mean? Like at those stages, yeah. So I just felt, I'm completely unevolved in a world where everybody understood what was going on around them. And a lot of my open mic times and my slam times was just me waiting to go on. And I think anybody who's just starting something, there is nothing else in their head. There is nothing else in their head. I remember Luke Wright was performing at another slam. He was headlining at another slam, and he was sat at a cafeteria table rewriting the poem that he was doing. Now, he wasn't rewriting it to edit it, he was rewriting it to refresh it in his mind. And it's that dedication, do you get what I mean? That was he's another one. He's another clever. I mean, I'm trying my best not to swear too much. He's another clever. He is another very clever man. You know what I mean?
You say Luke Wright was that?
Yeah, Luke Wright. Well, it's really funny because I did, like, me and Sarah used to run pubs and hotels, and we used to run a pub in Coggeshall called the Cricketers, and that's in Essex, and that's the town. It's only a small town, and that's where Luke Wright comes from.
Oh.
Yeah, it's quite a coincidence.
So there was something you said earlier as well, actually, about the character poems, and obviously
Right.
there was the first piece I heard you do was Ode to a Sofa Surfer, which is essentially, I guess, because you take on another persona, character poem. It's beautiful. It's sorry, you was going to say something.
I try not to take on personas or two different voices because they're you know what I mean. It's just a different perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, I try. Character poem is really the only way to explain it because it's not about me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because the.
Yeah, I was going to say the story. So it's
okay. Yeah, I did a live gig in Lewisham, and this bloke, after I'd done it, came up and gave me £10. I said, "No, there's a crisis been over there." He said, "No, this is for you, mate. You've had it so hard." All right. And I went, "Look, mate." And I put my hand out to him and said, "Thank you very much." And he still didn't get it. I shook his hand with a hand that I'm not supposed to have any fingers on, and he still didn't get it. He insisted that I took the tenner. So I went and bought us both a drink, and we sat there and talked for 2 hours.
Fair enough. And I feel it's your performance value that people would definitely believe it. Like, it's the performance, it's the emotion you put behind it. It is real. You know, from someone seeing it from the outside, it is a real thing, and you've really embodied this thing. So, I mean, my main question was going to be the process of that, and that how you would have approached it, especially as it's also about a subject that some people may take it. You know, if it's not approached right, may take it offensively, or yeah.
Well, once again, we come to the fact that everybody's journey into homelessness is completely unique. Unfortunately, the way people think people become homeless is quite generic. So the idea is to try and prick someone's conscience to a point where actually that could be me. You know what I mean? I could fall off a curb and break my leg. You know what I mean? And not be able to deliver parcels in my van because I've got a broken leg. To get what I mean? And then therefore not be able to pay my rent. And then, you know what I mean? And one step down to another step down to another step. Now, there are people out there with huge support networks that would catch them. You know what I mean? Which that's the idea of Ode to a Sofa Surfer. There's a part in it that says, "No, I've never needed to sleep on the streets." Because homeless doesn't just mean sleeping rough. Yeah. In fact, 93% of homeless people, or should I say 7% of recorded homeless people sleep rough. 7%. And our streets are still full of homeless people. But that's only 7% of recorded homeless people. The rest are hidden. They're in emergency accommodation. That's not a home. They're in hostels. That is not a home. And of course, the most common respite from homelessness is sleeping on someone's sofa.
Yeah.
So that's where Ode to a Sofa Surfer came in, was, okay, I'm not living on the streets, but I still have the issues underlying that means I can't go back to my old life yet. You know, it's because homelessness isn't a permanent. So for some people, isn't permanent. It isn't a permanent thing. There is like a breakdown in a relationship. Now, homelessness, it's not a lifelong. It's not always a lifelong problem for someone. It is a matter of just being kicked out of their flat by their missus. They don't want to go back. You know what I mean? So. Or the other way around, you know what I mean, by their husbands and, or partners, and they just don't want to, you know what I mean, go back because they know that they're just going to be in the same problem tomorrow, but with no support network, well, they have nowhere to go.
Yeah, that's man. It really does bring that out. It brings out that element of it could happen to anyone as well. You know, you could just be working your job, have an accident, and the next thing you know, there's no way to pay for your rent. There's no way to keep yourself safe. And yeah, so it's a powerful piece for that. It's a powerful piece for your performance value as well. And you've kind of already touched on, I guess, your influences and what kind of got you into the performance aspect and also writing about homelessness. But are there any other elements you think that drives your creative work?
Collaboration. Yeah, collaborations, writing for other people, writing copy, designing and devising workshops for other people. These are all spokes in a wheel. You know what I mean? And you need plenty of spokes to hold the integrity and the shape of a wheel. Some people call it strings to your bow. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's learning to always be learning, and you know what I mean, it's really important to me. You know what I mean? Because I spend 95% of my life indoors anyway, regardless of lockdown. In fact, you know what I mean, when they said you're allowed an hour's exercise a day, I'm like, I ain't going out every day. I ain't going out every day. Well, for an hour? No, not happening.
Oh man, I mean, yeah, fair enough. If it's not part of your routine, anyways, yeah.
It's just easier that way because when I'm outside, I tend to have a drink to deal with anxiety. So the only person people usually get to meet is like had a drink, Steph, and you I mean, like outspoken, not stirred. It's one of the most relaxed evenings I've ever known, and it gets more and more like relaxed as the night goes on. You know what I mean? You start off relaxed.
Am I any other way ever? Relax if I'm there on time. Yeah,
that was a snidey thing. You start off horizontal, and then turn up for the gig. But yeah, no, it's for me. Being a chef for so long was my creative outlet. Making people's taste buds dance was an amazing thing to do. Watching people just sink into their chair when they've eaten, like, I know, a coffee and almond panna cotta. Yeah, do you get what I mean? Watching them just go into their chair. You know what I mean? It's a beautiful thing, and for me, poetry replaced that. But there were 3 or 4 years that I didn't know that it needed replacing, and that was one of the biggest problems that I had with my mental health, was all the time that I had to think about everything that I'd lost.
Yeah.
Rather than spending a little bit of time on focusing on what you can grow.
Beautiful.
It's about growing other people. Do you get what I mean? Once you've grown yourself, then there's no point in being up there if you're not going to bring people with you.
I'm telling you that, yeah, this is totally about that. That's why at the end of that workshop, I was like, look, whatever you've got from this, just look at these links, get yourself paid, get yourself out there. Because, yeah, we have to impart this knowledge, and we have to get people to whatever stages we feel we're at and above that, because that's the only way the profession's going to elevate and the field.
Yeah, the Arts Council have been incredibly supportive. Massively supportive. I mean, I've had a few successful funding applications now, and all I can say about that is get in touch with them.
Yeah.
I mean, don't let the fear of it and or the common misapprehension was, they ain't going to be interested in anything I'm doing. They funded my first. I did a small 7-date tour, which I funded myself, but they funded a 22-date workshop and performance tour for Crisis, where I mean, I ended up performing with Jonathan Price at Southwark Cathedral. You know what I mean? And then it's a relationship with the Arts Council that you have, rather than a begging bowl.
Yeah. They advise you and they do some.
That's why they call them relationship managers.
Yeah.
Because it is a relationship, and once you have got funding once. As long as your ideas stand up to scrutiny, then they build on that relationship. I mean, once you've proved that you can do it and deliver it, then it's. And we should be encouraging other people to apply for funding.
Really, yeah.
I don't see it as competition. I really don't see it as competition because art wins either way.
Yeah. Like the one thing I always think about is sometimes you have to know our limitations and what we can deliver. We can't deliver everything for everyone. And sometimes
absolutely
that other people get that chance to deliver what they can, and different audiences are reached and different people can engage in that art. It needs to, we need to diversify.
Arts Council's funding isn't about getting funding for yourself. I can give you a list of the artists that I get paid out of my funding.
Most of it is you're paying other artists to do work.
Absolutely. This is it. To be honest, I get very, very little. Monetary-wise, I get very little because of ideas always expand. Therefore, there's always added expense. And so I end up like paying for a lot of things out of my own pocket because my bad planning or me deciding that
it's just you see the opportunity to do it, so you go and do it. And
we decided we don't need a trumpet, so we need an orchestra. Do you get what I mean? It's that kind of
way up. That cost me way up.
We're not doing this for 15 grand now, boys.
No, it does happen. It does happen, and I'm totally with that whole thinking of that. Most of my budget usually goes to paying for things. It usually goes to paying artists, goes to paying for the venue, the people involved. It's
travel. Insurance. There's just so much involved. I don't want to scare people because you're expected to be able to do this. Do you know what I mean? And prove that you can do this when you get funding. And that's why that's why funders they like you to have strong mentors or relationships with other people who have successfully achieved funding. Like Joelle Taylor's on all of my projects because she's just an amazing teacher, an awesome mentor, and she can get it done.
Which is what you need sometimes, right? Just someone who can get it done, because as artists we can lack the admin side sometimes. Again, that's testament to the connections and just that community that we need and helping each other, which is I think it shows through your whole creative practice, from what your writing is about, and from the passion you show in everything you do and the charity work as well. This is going on now, so I'm gonna bring it down, start closing it down. But I just wanted, for the people out there, is there anyone or any other pieces of art or anything that you recommend that people should check out? Anything that that has blown your mind lately or anything like that?
There's this bloke called Dauda, right?
I love
it. He's proper smashing it lately. He throws a great workshop together. He's an awesome host when he turns up. Be serious. No, that was serious. You are smashing it down. That piece about your brother. I mean, your sister was banging. It was. You know what I mean? And you know what I mean, the one that you done, like, just the Soul. Is it Soul from the Soul series? SOL.
Yeah.
That one is that's just being able to film it and produce it and all yourself. I think that's one thing about lockdown. People have been learning how to do things themselves. Now, it doesn't mean they're the best at what they're doing. It means they're getting by.
Yes, exactly. Getting better.
You've got to look at this too, right? Everything is a glimpse of something. So now, in the future, rather than like trusting an editor to be able to do something,
you can input.
You've got a more informed eye.
Yeah.
To look at it, and you're more knowledgeable about the tools that they use. Do you get what I mean?
That's the main thing. I think it's just be knowledgeable about your craft as well, because sometimes I think as artists we can just be like, well, we've done our bit, chuck it over to whoever's going to do the rest, and it doesn't go as planned because we haven't thought that far. So yeah, definitely, it's part of knowing what we want from our vision, at least,
but also knowing what we're lacking, what we need. My whole DYCP from the Arts Council, my developing your creative practice, my whole fund for that, it was called Advancement Through Education. And so it allows for me to take hosting lessons. I've been hosting for 3 years, right? But not properly.
Yeah, we just step on.
I mean, it's not. I mean, and like performance skills. You know what I mean? I might be able to perform, but it doesn't mean I'm up there. And the only way you get up there is by learning from the best. And that's what my DYCP is allowing me to do. It's allowing me to buy the equipment that I need. It's allowing me to pay people to train me how to do what I want to do. Not only that, but they also pay. I mean, it's also part of that is to teach me how to use technology properly, to make the most out of it for my creative practice. So that crosses the borders from being creative just to getting by in a normal world now, because of everything's technology based.
Yeah. And I mean, the camera thing for me personally was like everything content-driven world where people are filming everything right now. So yeah, these are things that I would recommend everyone kind of just do that if you've got the capacity for it, if you've got the time for it, if you've got the space and availability, then just learn something new. Definitely in the creative field, editing, behind the scenes, it's always helpful. Always.
So, as we're going back, so Joel Taylor, of course, a big influence. Kay Tempest, massive influence. I will get to meet them one day. I will. Who else so far? Adam Camerlin smashes it. Adam Camerlin. He was a world.
He's got this poem about he had that poem about the eating from bins or something like that. He's amazing. Yeah, he's amazing.
He's just got a new book out now called Cedar. It's taken him years and years and years to research, and I've performed with him. I've been to watch him. Yeah, I mean, he's a force, mate.
Yeah.
He makes me feel like I'm on the periphery, but not as in like he holds it, but as in like I'm on the outside of being anything near as that good. He encompasses everything. He encompasses performance, emotion, and then like in his last show, I think it was Let's Go Outside. It was about toxic masculinity. Oh, come on in, yeah. I mean, but he had two break dancers. They like two dancers interpreting the show as well. You know what I mean? So It was, oh mate, he kills it every time. It doesn't matter what he's doing; he's just banging at it.
Yeah. He's, and I also love the comedy he puts in some of his pieces as well. It's just like that's something I definitely struggle with. So I appreciate anyone who can make serious things funny. Sometimes it's like well done.
There's others like Selena Godden. Now, Selena Godden's another one. I watched her perform Red at Joel Taylor's book launch for the Songs My Enemy Taught Me. And one minute she's on the stage just belting this amazing setup, and the next minute we're outside on Oxford Street, outside the 100 Club, sharing a rollie, or having a smoke, having a rollie each. You know what I mean? It's like, it's that kind of like, because her book, Mrs. Death is just, the options have just been picked up by Idris Elba's film company. So that's another one. And you think, oh wow, I mean, how did you get there? Years is how they got there. I mean, they've been doing this for absolutely years, and hard work is. There is no substitute for how much work they've put in, apart from the fact that they couldn't be as successful as they are unless they weren't beautiful humans too. And that's exactly what they are. First, primarily, they're beautiful humans. Another one, Chris Chris from Tong Fu. You heard Tong Fu?
I know Tong Fu.
Chris Redmond from Tong Fu. Yeah. He's been doing this like journal, homeschooling for the last 18 days. And I'm telling you, it's some of the most beautiful writing I've ever written, I've ever read. You know what I mean? And they're only little short snippets of what's happened during the day with him and his two girls and his wife, you know what I mean, and his missus, and you know what I mean? The rigmaroles of homes, just these beautiful little, do you know, those candid, honest snippets.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like introducing a day where other people are in it. Because Sarah goes off to work and I spend most of my time on my own, so you know what I mean, which for me is all right because I don't mind my own company, which is pretty cool because most other people can't stand my company. Apparently I talk too much.
What? Well, no, it's been a gift for this one actually. But no, it's been great. It's been a great conversation. And your set last month was amazing. Like, I really do appreciate it. I just appreciate you. I appreciate you as a creative. I appreciate you as a person. And I really want everyone to just engage with what you're doing. So if there's anything else that you're putting out coming forward, we'll definitely be sharing it. Just, you know, you've got friends here.
I've got once again, Arts Council will help me out. I'm writing a show at the moment called Surviving Suicide, which is kind of like the idea of it, once again, is to put different perspectives on that, on suicide. See, survivors from suicide aren't only the people that weren't successful at killing themselves. Survivors from suicide are the family members, the children for the people that were successful. They're surviving somebody else's suicide. You know what I mean? So the idea was to put the show together to capture a mum's thoughts at not seeing her son every day. You know what I mean? Or a child's thoughts of not growing up with having someone around them. You know what I mean? Wow. That parent around them. So yeah, we've got and that's good. It's going to have a few other. The idea is we're going to a one-man show, but there's going to be 5 other poets that will be 3D projection mapping around the stage that I can bounce off. So yeah, See, once again, there's another 5. There's another 5 poets getting paid.
Yeah.
Because of one of the other parts of that is when we do tour, we will be going to the hometowns of those 5 poets, and they will then perform their part live on stage, and then we get to pay them for that as well. You see, so we get to pay them for their poem and for us filming them, and then we get to pay them again for performing live, in their hometown, where their friends and family can come and watch them. I think that's the important thing about when you're applying for funding, is to see how many other people can benefit. How many other people can benefit from, and not only monetarily ways, as in like a step up the ladder on profile. There's lots of ways people can benefit by collaborating with other people. Loads of ways.
The experience alone can always be.
Yeah, learning. Yeah, absolutely. I'm always learning.
Yeah. When do you envision that be?
We've had to have an extension on it because if I can't get out of the house to film anyone. But so 31st of June, it'll be ready to tour.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, from the 31st of June. It'll be. I'm not saying that's when, because of that's festival season. So probably early next year, we think about like rolling it out across the country. It should be fun.
It sounds amazing.
It will. It's. You've heard one of the poems from it, I think. Yeah, I mean, when you look into my eyes, you spy the idea of suicide idling behind me. Can you see the biggest threat for me? Can you believe my biggest threat is me? Now, there are no scars on these arms and no razor blades last trace, but my pain is still real when it's etched on my face and then stretched into place. See, all my hate, it's self-owned, it's all aimed at myself. I am longing for sleep, knowing sleep lives in hell. When poked or provoked, then untamed I can be. I'm not the only one that's poking, but we're all poking at me. Now, I like to highlight thy past, but I can't take hate and create a hearty laugh. And I can't chart or graph internal scars. I know, because I tried hard. See, now, if you're overtly hurt, then you can shout, ow! People will gather around. Some will come to the ground. If you fall down, they are bound to care, amongst others stares. It's not the same when the pain emanates from the brain, when I'm mistaken the creation of chemical sedation, meaning my mania takes a stage again. Now, I negated my rage an age ago, so I only flow slow, so you know what I said and can see that I meant it. I never planned to live to resent things, but I'm still here preventing an end of me, pretending to be happy in a tapestry called life. I am not ready to surrender to apathy or spite. Now, might seem external, but my eternal fight is internal, like a journal of torture scorched upon my unconscious thoughts. Now, I don't need a better plan of attack, just better defenses when attacking myself. And I can't shelf or store over emotions, even though it is a novel notion that I'm open to, especially when exploding is the only thing I'm known to do. And that sort of goes on a bit from there, but yeah. It's,
that's Jesus Christ. Yeah, that was amazing, man. So did you I think that was the last one you done in the feature in the feature slot. But that was sick. That Jesus Christ. Thank you so much for sharing that.
That's actually called Surviving Suicide. That's the poem that the show opens with, because it does a few things. It reveals the fact that I'm still here because I'm doing the poem. You know what I mean? So it does a few things. It also tries to look into other people's like thoughts towards suicide as well. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. I think that may be a good place to wind down. Thank you so much for your time today, and
Mate, it's always a pleasure, you know that.
No, it's definitely pleasure's all ours, and definitely isn't the last time Spoken Not Stirred and yourself will be collaborating.
I've already booked my ticket.
For next one, that's gonna be fun.
I've already booked my ticket. I'm gonna write something new, and I'm gonna put that verse that I wrote in your workshop in it.
Sick, cool. I appreciate that.
And I'm going to tell everybody it's because I went to your workshop.
The advertisement value. You can't pay for it. Wonderful.
Listen, man, I am my very own trust pilot.
It's great, man.
Yes. And that was Neanderthal Bard. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the conversation and his piece. If you want to know more from Neanderthal Bard, do follow him. He's mostly on Facebook, Neanderthal Bard. We'll be putting his links up as well. So if you're watching this on YouTube, the links will be underneath. If you are listening to us on the various platforms, do remember to follow us at SNS Poetry on Instagram, also Spoken Not Stirred on Facebook. And yeah, we'll be able to send you a little bit more information about our guest artist and what we've got coming up. Speaking of which, our next feature is going to be Antonia Jade King, and that is going to be on the 18th of February. So hopefully you can catch that. Hopefully you did catch that. And if you did, please let us know how that experience was. Also want to let you know about some great activities happening in the month of February with Be and Do. They're doing some great work for LGBTQ History Month. A lot of great activities for people to get engaged with, some educational stuff, some film watching together, and it's a lot of stuff to do even in this period, which is great. So that's Be and Do. You can follow them on Instagram at beandddo.s3a, and on Facebook that is Be and Do. So once more, I have been Dauda Ladejobi. This has been the Spoken Not Stirred podcast. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed yourself. Have a great day.